Hey everybody, it's Holly, and today I'm actually going to make the video about my concussions and my struggle with post-concussive syndrome. So first off, let me just tell you a little bit of, how I got the concussions to begin with. My very first concussion that I got with this whole post-concussive syndrome was actually when I was at dance. Back in November, when I was competing with dance, we were in the middle of a practice, and we do this stunt where someone walks across your back, so you're like bent over, someone will step on your back, and it was about like Chris Angel, the illusionist. So she was supposed to look like she was kind of like falling and stuff. Well, her spotters got ahead of her, and I was the last person in the line of people that she walked across. So when her spotters got ahead of her, she lost her balance, and her knee went straight into the back of my head, right back here. And your occipital lobe, which can control your vision, which controls your vision. So that was my first concussion. I then had practice the next day and attempted to dance, but got too dizzy and ended up having to sit out and watching for the rest of the practice. So concussion number one was not very good. I was dizzy for about a full week. The next weekend, that happened on a Saturday. The next Saturday, I finally started feeling good again. You know, I was like, whatever, going back to normal. Went to dance. Dance, did great, did totally fine, no headache, nothing. Got home, was super dizzy, had a headache, went to bed for the rest of the night. So that's how that went. Then the next day, that Sunday, the week after the first hit to the head, I was leaned over, my friend was laying on the ground, and I was popping his back. And when I leaned over to pop his back, what you do is you put all your weight down, if you've never popped anyone's back on the floor before. And I was bent over, and all the blood rushed to my head, and I lost my balance. I was dizzy, and I fell and I hit my head on the living room carpet, which is really hard underneath. We don't have very good carpet. It's not padded hardly at all anymore because it's super old. So, therefore, that was concussion number 2. Now, since I had 2 concussions within a week of each other, which means I had 2 spots in my brain that were bruised. One back here, actually on the right side, and one right here, where I hit my head right here. So the bruise was basically like right in this area, and one right in this area. So I had 2 bruises in my head. My brain was pretty swollen from the bruising, causing me to have what's called post-concussive syndrome. Post-concussive syndrome can last anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 years. It goes on forever, basically. That's what it feels like anyway. I was put on bed rest for a week, which means I wasn't allowed to drive, I wasn't allowed to go to school, I could not dance, I could not run any fire calls or medical calls or anything. I was allowed to basically leave my bed to go to the bathroom, eat dinner, and take a walk 30 minutes a day so I didn't lose any muscle because I had a lot of it. After that week was up, I was finally released to go back to school. School and home only, nothing else. I was allowed to drive only during daylight hours. So I left for school late because it was still dark during the day because it was in December. So I would get to school a few minutes late, but I had a pass for it because of my concussions and the situation that was going on. So yeah, I went to school late, only a few minutes. I wasn't ever like missed my first hour late. I had only missed like the first 5 or so minutes of class, which wasn't a big deal to me. I get out at 12:30 or 12:40 depending on the day. So when I get out of school, I was required to come home and go straight to bed and take at least a 30-minute nap. Which, not gonna complain because that was pretty cool. I wasn't allowed to do any heavy lifting, which means I couldn't clean the kitchen. Which kind of rocked because our pans are like cast iron and they considered that heavy lifting. No big deal for me, you know. I didn't mind not cleaning the kitchen once in a while. Come home, take a nap, get up, take a 30-minute walk, don't do any homework. I was not allowed to do homework, which kind of rocked. I wasn't allowed to take tests, which that was the crappy part. Since I could not take any tests, I couldn't take my semester finals, which means I had C's and D's. I was put in as exempt, but because I couldn't do the work before, those were put in as zeros. So my last semester grades for first semester of my senior year didn't turn out too well. I had 1 D and a C. The rest were all A's for the 5 classes I go to. So, as you can tell, I didn't do well. This semester is a lot better, but that's beside the point. That's not even part of this video. After December came, I had all of Christmas break, which is about 3 weeks at our school. So I had about 3 weeks to sit and rest and do nothing, to rest my brain and get the swelling to go down. When I went back to the doctor after the 1st of January, I was able to start going a little back into activity. So instead of 30-minute walks, I got an hour walk. I was allowed to start using media because throughout November and December, after it all happened and I was put on bed rest, I wasn't allowed to use the computer. I couldn't use the TV. I couldn't use my cell phone. I had to handwrite an 8-page paper, which is like 16 pages of notebook paper. That kind of sucked. But because of my situation, I didn't have all the research I needed, so I only had to write 10 pages instead of 16, which would equal out to be about 5 to 7 pages, depending on how big you write. I write kind of little, so it was on the higher end of the scale. So that kind of worked out a little bit for me. I was able to actually write my paper instead of typing it. Although the spelling and the grammar wasn't always the greatest because my brain was a little fuzzy. I couldn't remember everything that I had read or seen or worked on because I had memory loss for a while. But when I was released to start using media again, I took advantage of it. I got straight on the computer. I got all my social networking back up to date. I watched hours upon hours of Teen Mom and Pretty Little Liars and all those other fun shows that I watch, which doesn't really matter to you probably. And of course, being a 17-year-old female, what did I do all day long? I text. The second I got my phone back. It was awesome. I loved having my phone back. The only sucky part was the day after Christmas, I had to get an MRI on my head again. Now, when I say again, I don't mean again for my concussions. I mean again as in I've already had an MRI on my head before because I had a fluid buildup on my brain. That's why we did the MRI, to make sure that the concussions didn't mess with the surgery that I had over the last summer before my 16th birthday, which would have been almost 2 years ago now. Once June 16th gets here, it'll be 2 years since I had surgery, which is pretty cool. They wanted to make sure that the concussion didn't cause a buildup in my ear again to cause my cholesteatoma, which is a buildup of dead skin and infection, which basically eats away at your eardrum and your inner ear bones. If you don't catch it in time, then it'll eat into your brain. No big deal, right? Well, I had a patch of fluid also, so that wasn't going to help my case at all. We had to get that all taken care of, and where I was hit, right back here, could have caused mess up in here again. You never know though. But turns out my MRI came back clear because shortly after joining school again and getting back on track with everything, February 7th came around and I had a neuro appointment. So I went and saw a pediatrics neurologist, my apologies, a pediatric neurologist, so he could check and make sure everything was coming together and I was healing perfectly fine. When I went and saw him, Dr. Backdash, he was pretty awesome. He was a little bit of everything. When I say that, I mean he wasn't American. Well, he was, but he was like his tongue twister. That's a hard word to say. He was French and Indian and American and all those other things. So he had a pretty cool accent, which kind of rocked to listen to the whole time. He talked really quiet, so being able to not hear well out of my left ear, I was constantly asking him to repeat himself. But he cleared me to start driving at night. He cleared me to go back to dance, and he also cleared me to start running fire calls again, but he couldn't give me a note. So I'm visiting the doctor one last time on Wednesday to get a note saying I can start running fire calls again, which rocks because I've missed it so much. My radio is actually turned on really loud, so if it goes off, you'll be able to hear it, which is kind of cool because I have to get used to listening to the tone again because I'm not used to it anymore because we got new radios. Anyway, so yeah, basically living with post-concussive syndromes consists of having a headache almost every day. In fact, even to this day, I still get really bad headaches. I still feel like there's a lot of pressure in my head and it's gonna explode. But I've learned how to cope with it well. I take a Tylenol at least twice a day because of headaches. I still have vision problems in my left eye, which I'm going to see a specialist for. They think it may have either caused me to have a lazy eye, just not the lazy eye that's like, whoo, you know, doesn't go well, like it moves and stuff. Not one of those, just one that doesn't focus correctly. Or they think it might have caused an astigmatism. So either way, I'll probably have to get glasses or a contact for that eye. But I won't know until I get a hold of the doctor again, which has to call me back. But other than that, the first couple weeks were horrible. I could not stand up straight. I was so dizzy. I was like, woo! When I closed my eyes and I lift my arms, I couldn't hold still. I kept moving everywhere. I couldn't find my nose. I'd like tap over here, up here, over here, because my perception was so messed up and the way I was hit in the brain, it didn't work well with trying to find those things. Although my reflexes all turned out totally fine, I do not have permanent damage. Maybe a slight bit of short-term memory loss or long-term. They haven't really determined yet, but they did say there was some memory loss that will come back. It varies depending on what I'm trying to remember because I have selective memory, which is my fault, not the concussion. Now that is basically it for this video. I gave you a lot of information about my life since November, and right now it's finally starting to look up. And that's all that matters. So I will see you next time. Have a nice night. Bye.